Ushu ikan banani hai I a I a banani bi puntekan hai I a I a hai I a I a haunda utibuya hai I a I.
Of course, this wonderful place raises a lot of issues, very important issues, because it's a kind of work that relates different ontologies or modes of existence and different epistemologies or ways of knowing or knowledge systems. Of course, this we Westerners live in a society in which magical thinking is almost ignored or even not known. And Ernesto Neto introduces magical thinking inside the Venetian Biennale.
I'm happy because it was a year of work, and I think we, in a way, find a way to create a place that people can stay, breathe, think a little bit about some other things, and especially with this voice from the Huni Kuin, this voice of nature, that can maybe make a kind of open a little bit more possibility for this new knowledge, this old new knowledge come to the society and clean a little bit our heart, bringing peace for us.
When he decides to bring to the Huni Kuin people to this installation, in a certain sense, in my view, he is presenting them their existence as a work of art. And this is very polemical. We can debate for hours on this matter.
I think that the question of how Ernesto and the Huni Kuin are working together, whether this is a sculpture or a social project or an activism or a form of resistance, it's all of these things. And I think it doesn't really, I think the way that artists today practice their work and how they expand the definition of what art can be, I think we just need to use the platform of art to make really important topics heard. And I think it's the imagination that artists always talk about and work with that maybe can help us to find ways to maybe apply these other forms of knowledge into a larger context.
Eu sou Huni Kuin, Brasil e Amazonas, do estado do Acre. Meu nome é Tadeu, na língua Sotiana Ruibai. Então, eu queria, assim, deixar a minha mensagem de alegria que eu vim da floresta, esse conhecimento que a gente tem como povo Huni Kuin. A região onde eu moro tem 3.000 pessoas que falam Hanchakuin, própria língua mãe.
E nossa cultura, né? Planta algodão, nós tinge nossas linhas com tinta tinta natura, da natureza, né? Que tinta da mata. E nós temos
e a nossa resistência também. Nós temos 500 anos de contato no Brasil, um pouco mais de 200 anos no Acre. E muitos povos foram exterminados. E os povos que sobreviveram foram os que resistiram. E um dos povos é o povo Huni Kuin. E os povos indígenas da Amazônia, e o povo Huni Kuin sobrevive da natureza. Planta os seus roçados, caçam, pescam, depende do rio limpa para beber, para tomar banho. E as parcerias, as alianças sempre têm sido importantes nesses últimos tempos, desde a demarcação das terras indígenas, né, de apoio, programas e trabalho que nem esse que o Tia Ernesto tem feito nesses últimos tempos.
de arte contemporânea.
It's a great honor to be here with you because where I'm from, there's been a lot of cultural, we call it cultural genocide. We've lost our languages, our traditions, our ceremonies, our knowledge of the plant medicines.
Nosso conhecimento, perdeu os conhecimentos das plantas.
So it's very important to have your voices here, because I think one of the most important things for indigenous people globally is the threat of the loss of land. We have a lot of threats from dams, mining, oil and gas, and I think it's very similar in Brazil. And also what I wanted to say, I have 3 points. One is that in Europe, there's been a very long history since contact of people, indigenous people from the Americas, coming to Europe on display. And for us, this happened to many groups in Canada, including the Biotak people. And these are very painful histories. One of the last surviving Biotak women, after they killed all of her family, they brought her to Britain on display, and then she died of a disease. So I think in this context, it's very important to also think of this history of indigenous peoples being on exhibition and not having a voice. There seems to be a turn towards the indigenous in times of crisis in Western culture. This happened in the 1920s with anthropologists like Franz Boas because of industrialization. It happened again in North America in the 60s as part of the counterculture movement because there was a crisis of religion and belief. It's happening now because we have an ecological crisis. We are destroying our environment, and people are looking to indigenous people for different ways of living in the world. My hope is that this turn can be a true learning from one another, rather than exploitation, which has happened a lot, exploitation of knowledge, of medicinal plant knowledge as well. And I also am very conscious as a curator of contemporary art, but also indigenous art, of terminology. And so for me, I wanted to know what this space was going to be like. And again, some of the things that I was saying on the panel, the fact that there is a long history of indigenous peoples coming to Europe on display, so I was a bit concerned, to be honest, about that. And I also wanted to speak about what I'm calling a kind of turn towards the indigenous that's happening now, and to ask the question why. Because for us, even in Canada, where people have a lot of agency, there is a moment where there's a real knowledge, not only of contemporary art made by indigenous artists, but this history and this art history, but also the social and political realities. And I see it happening here within the Venice Biennale. And for me, I want to get to the root of it. One of the things that I think is happening, as Ernesto said as well, there's a spiritual crisis in Western culture, but it's also an ecological crisis. So I think it's really important to think about that, and to think about how we can learn from one another and not consume culture.
If we imagine, in education, radical projects, experiments, radical educational projects as smaller spaces of experimentation. The Huni Kuin is a smaller space of experimentation to live with the planet, with each other, and with other peoples in a more just and equitable way. So if we imagine that to be a prefigurative kind of living, you're living in the present, taking heed of the past, but you're living a future kind of living. So you critique the status quo, but you practice in your everyday life the kind of things we talk about on panels and radical people put words to, but they don't practice. How do we take those spaces and popularize them? How are these kinds of conversations aided and amplified so that they become more of the norm? Because I think it's out of conversation between the past, the present, and the future that we're going to reimagine the way that we should be living to be a more sustainable world, to not destroy other people and the planet. And then the last thing, which in this context I think makes sense, is how do we make sure that capitalism doesn't co-opt and consume those alternate prefigurative spaces such that it just becomes part of the norm?
I think it's incredibly important, as has been pointed out at the beginning, to think about the global context in which this is occurring and the contextualization of how indigenous peoples have interacted with biennales, for example, in the past. I think it's also very important to point out the specificity of this building, the Arsenale, as you pointed out, absolutely a center of Venetian domination of this lagoon, from which they could colonize parts of Istria, Corfu, etc., etc. As an anthropologist, I'm very interested in the specificity of the local, which is also, to echo Jochen, to think about the decision of Huni Kuin to participate in this event and to collaborate in a long-term, deep and meaningful partnership with Ernesto. I think that it's important to respect that decision and to not think of indigenous peoples as a kind of a monumental whole, but to also respect the individual decisions that are taken along that trajectory. I think that's also very important.
E hoje, essa resistência de sobrevivência que nós tivemos, principalmente o povo Huni Kuin, né, quase fomos, a nossa cultura quase foi exterminada, a nossa língua, a nossa religião, a nossa espiritualidade. O mais importante hoje é que a gente está retomando, né, isso de volta, a condução pelos próprios líderes do nosso povo, que até começo de década de 70 éramos impostos pelos seringalistas, patrões seringalistas que extraíam látex na época. Hoje a autonomia voltou depois da demarcação, né? A condução das terras indígenas e da cultura são das próprias nossas lideranças, e a gente busca essa autonomia, e principalmente valorizando a nossa cultura e resistindo a esse sistema, né, grande da sociedade, né, de cultura, de língua, de tecnologia. E isso quem nos possibilita são essas parcerias, essas alianças, como do Ernesto Neto, como tem fazendeiros e petroleiros que querem destruir, mas tem pessoas de coração bom que querem ajudar, né, e ver a nossa sobrevivência, não só dos povos indígenas, mas da natureza que serve à humanidade.
Isso é muito importante, fazer essa rede mundial em defesa das tradições, em defesa das vidas, é muito importante, porque as oportunidades que nós temos para levar a nossa voz como um povo, fazer parte desse processo, são momentos como esse. E nesse momento, através do artista Neto, que trouxe a gente aqui, mas a gente precisa ampliar isso no mundo inteiro. Os povos indígenas precisam ser ouvidos, colocado a sua experiência e de como nós temos a nossa opinião também, de como poder ajudar a salvar o nosso planeta.
The thing about producing knowledge is that the academy or the university and Western knowledge systems have told us that the way to produce knowledge is often individuals sitting down writing their thoughts, and the way that you collaborate with other people is through books and through other people's ideas that they've written down. From the continent of Africa, but also other indigenous societies, community and producing knowledge is always a collective endeavor. If you think about orality and not writing things down as a key form of indigenous knowledge, not only production but also how it's distributed, how it is passed down, then the actual form of this conversation is really important. So not just the content, not just what we're talking about, but the way that it's set up. the way that different voices were brought into and facilitated in a conversational space. This is ways of producing knowledge.
Uma outra questão colocada, como nós enfrentarmos o capitalismo? É um desafio muito grande. Nós enfrentarmos o capital do consumo, que é o maior poder de destruição, porque quanto mais se consumir, mais se precisa destruir um para consumir o outro. E esse destruído sempre vai mais a questão, no caso da Amazônia, a destruição mesmo da biodiversidade, das riquezas naturais que tem, para se construir outro material de consumo. Uma vez, participando de um simpósio sobre a Amazônia na Coreia do Sul, eu tive a oportunidade de conversar com o presidente da Hyundai, na Coreia do Sul, e ele perguntou como ele poderia ajudar, né, e proteger a Amazônia. E uma das coisas que eu falei para ele foi que era muito difícil para ele, como uma empresa muito grande, aceitar o meu pedido, mas mesmo assim eu fiz, que era acabar com a indústria dele, né, que ia poluir menos o nosso planeta. E como eu tinha falado, ele me respondeu que não podia, então, como eu falei, então ele não pode atender o meu pedido.
House.